Okay. So based on this sort of thinking that we mainly have developed then together with the Dutch colleagues, but also together with the Hungarian colleagues and a number of other countries that participated in making the guide, for example, where this strategy model is presented. And this is basically based on the Finnish model originally. And then, and with this sort of thinking of strategy as action in the background, we set out to have a look at the simplest possible model for an internationalization strategy that can be out there in a way. And there are a lot of strategy models out there. So there's no, again, right answer. You can certainly take another model and it can work very well. But this is simple in the sense that it covers all the main areas, but it doesn't go further than that. It covers the basics, so to say. So it takes into account the operating environment of the institution. It takes into account the values that an institution has, the core skills that you have as an organization, and the mission, the purpose of your institution. Then you create a vision for where you want to be with your internationalization, why it exists, what's the purpose of it, and then set a number of strategic goals. And based on this information, you draw up an action plan year by year. So it's a very simple, straightforward model in a way. So a little bit more than about the steps. It comes like this now. So, but let's say a few words about the mission, the core skills and the values, because these are the background. And often, of course, you have these already. The institution has already mission. It has a purpose for being. You know why it's there. You have a certain set of people working for you that have certain core skills. And maybe your institution has a set of values that you operate by as well. That is at the core of your existence. You might have this written up in a strategy as well, or otherwise they just exist. So then the basic questions that you need to ask yourself is that how is EU and international cooperation present in the mission statement? And what are the internationalization core skills and competences of your organization? Are there ones you need to develop, or do you have them already, or what is the setup? And what are the values that are of importance to an international internationalization strategy and international cooperation? So you sort of need to take what is there and analyze it from the international point of view. The operating environment, again, you need to look at changes in the operating environment, the new skills demands, future professions, and then different strategies around the mega trends and so forth. This is all a part of what I described in the previous presentation. It's all a part of the operating environment. And here you can be as broad as you want or as narrow as you want, depending on the situation. And you can have a lot of this information already existing. And here can also come in, for example, questions of anticipation and looking into the future for certain professions. But then really at the core, of course, of a strategy is to establish a kind of vision for yourself. So what kind of a VET organization do you want to be in now it says 2020 here, but 2030, 2040? How can we be more qualitative, more competitive, possibly also more international? And what does this really mean? And why are we doing it? So the vision should, in a way, encompass the where you want to be in the future. And the basic questions, of course, here to ask is also why you're doing internationalization. So not just stick to the obvious, we are going to internationalize, but why? And get to the true nature of why you're doing the work you're doing. And that the question why also helps when you set up the strategic goals. So what are the most central areas that you need to have development in? How are there already strategic goals for your institution, and how does internationalization come into them? And what are the sort of long-term goals that you would need to set for yourself? And here it's very important when you look at strategic goals to not put the goals too much in the future. For example, many of you maybe have applied for accreditation in the new Erasmus Plus program, and it's a 7-year accreditation. And I find that a very, very long period to set goals for. So the fact is that a good approach would actually be to set goals for the coming 3 or 4 years and then update them when you come to that medium period of the new Erasmus Plus program. This would be a much better strategy process than setting goals for the full 7 years. Because really, to look 7 years ahead, if you think 7 years back, it's quite difficult. You don't really know what the development will look like. You don't even know what the Erasmus Plus program will look like in 7 years. It also develops over a program period. And you certainly don't know what the world of work will look like, or your own institution situation locally or regionally within your countries. So it's important to set long-term goals, but when we mean long-term is still not very, very long-term. It should be on a reasonable scale. But then, in a way, what it all comes down to is actually drawing up an action plan year by year as well on how to achieve this and how to actually make strategy become true and affect everybody's work in your institutions, and especially affect the students and their skills and abilities to get jobs or work internationally or whatever the goal is. And here again, you need to do a jump maybe from a more, the big thinking and the visionary thinking to a very concrete. How are we actually going to do this? Who is going to do it? How with which means? With what time? What funding? Do we need to apply for projects, or do we do it with our own funds, or do we use both? And how do we go ahead with this? And who will have the time to do it? And what kind of skills do we need? And do we have those skills already? Do we have the partners? And so forth. So this is really very concrete when you draw up an action plan. So for every strategic goal, there should be certain actions that needs to be taken so you can push forward with that goal. Or you make the plan year by year, but certainly it's not so that you have all the answers in 1 year. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 or 4 years to build up, for example, a good solid partnership around Europe that you can work with on certain topics. So it's not something that always happens very fast. And in a way, where it gets interesting is the connection between the strategic goals, the vision, and the action plan. How can you bring that together, and how can you actually get people excited about what they're doing with this? And now again, of course, the best format is not necessarily writing a really long document that you really write everything up in. You need to find also other ways of communicating both the strategic goals and why we're doing this work, the questions to really the purpose of it all, and then also to why we're doing the actions and who is going to do the actions, and to get people, working on these questions. And one of the biggest mistakes, of course, here is that you plan a lot of action. You really focus on just having a lot of action, but you don't make sure that there is a connection back to the strategic goals. And sometimes this happens in the project world, and especially if we go back to the times of the Leonardo program. Many of you maybe were involved in the Leonardo program as well, and it was quite common that organizations were just applying for a lot of projects. Like, it was really about just getting as many projects as possible. And that's a little bit the sort of thinking that it's more important with a lot of action. It's not so important if that action is actually strategically aligned with the most important questions in your institution. And so you might have had projects and things that were not important really at all to the institution, just because there happened to be an opportunity to apply for funding in that area. And this is, of course, not how it should be. We all know this now, and I mean, we're all getting much better at this, I think, to align also different project funding with strategies, but it's still a lot of work to do that, and to really choose the right ones to focus on, and to put your effort and time in the right kind of doing and the right kind of work. It is not an easy thing, and that's why we talk about a process. So you need to, of course, come back to this and look at, are we achieving the goals? and are we are the strategic goals formulated in the right way? And this is why it needs to be a rolling strategy as well, so that it's even if you fix it for 3 to 4 years ahead, you might also revisit it and change things when things around you are changing that require that, or when you notice that you're not on the right track, we're not actually achieving our vision. We've kind of the strategic goals haven't really been in the right focus areas so that the big vision can be achieved, which is really often then about the students still, or about the world of work, you know, providing a better service. So then you go back and you change that as well. And this is what the quality circle is really all about as well. So that you do the planning, definitely, that's the strategic thinking. You do the doing, that's the action plans, but you also check, and based on the checking, you act if you need to and you find problems and fault that things are not working out. And at the background of this, you also need to remember that you need to mobilize people, you need to inspire people, you need to apply or have time for reflection, and you need to show appreciation for the work that people are doing. So you also build it into the institutional culture. And this is actually something that the Dutch quality scan is very good at. It's very good at finding this, that have you built in the strategic thinking into your institutional culture. Because one of these big sort of truths about strategy work that many strategy people are always referring to is that you can draw up wonderful strategies, you can have beautiful visions, very well aligned strategic goals, action plans that are really practical and very doable, and people are even committed to doing the work. But if the organizational culture around you are not aligned with this strategy work and with these goals, the organizational culture will destroy your strategy and will destroy the work you're doing. So you might have everything else in place, but if the organizational culture is kind of wrong, or in a way working against this, it is very, very difficult to fight it with the strategy. It's sometimes referred to as the organizational culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's a kind of a saying. So it just destroys it in a second. And this is important to be aware of, that you cannot think that you change an organization just with strategy work or just with drawing up a better vision. Then you need to do a lot more work with that organizational culture as well. So it's a combination of getting the balance right there, that people need to not just be committed, but also be allowed to work in a way that makes it possible. And actually, this is especially important when you speak about internationalization, because sometimes internationalization, international cooperation, EU funding, mobility of students and staff, it can be a little bit in opposition to the general culture of the organization. I've seen this in Finland sometimes. I've certainly seen it in other countries. I mean, I've gone around a lot and worked with both boards of schools and different groups in different countries, and it is not always so that internationalization is seen as an opportunity for an organization. It might be seen as extra funding. So you can get extra funding, yes, but the rest is sometimes opposite to the institutional culture of the organization. And then you need to be aware of that and be realistic. It doesn't mean you can't do this work, but you need to also put goals of working with the culture and working with how to change that situation into the system. So you can't jump too fast too far in a way. So this is maybe something. And if you want to go further into this, to do the quality and impact scan of the Dutch Dutch national agency, it can be quite useful to get an insight into your own organization. It's done so that different parts of the organization do it at the same time, so you get a view of different people's views as well. Anyway, so when you draw all of this together, in a way, you can look at it like this, that you get a sort of analysis of the strategic aims that you have in your institution, together with the meta strategies and the mega trends, and that together forms a view of the operating environment and the vision, and it kind of lays the ground for maybe what you are looking for with the internationalization within your institution. Then you also, of course, need to take into account the students, the teachers, staff, management, the workplaces and companies around you, and your partners. So which partners are you actually working with? They also form that operating environment and affect the vision that you set for yourself and your activities. There can be a number of different scenarios, so that there isn't just one truth. You can maybe end up having to choose between a few different pathways, and that is quite normal and quite okay, in fact. So you need to also have that in mind. But when you've chosen your path, your vision, your path for the future, you build up some visionary goals and qualitative and quantitative maybe improvement goals for yourself. But here it is really important to not make too many strategic goals for your institution for a short period of 3 to 4 years. So if you're trying to work in every area, I mean that you're really trying to, for example, enlarge the geographic scope of where you're working, not just Europe, but the rest of the world. You're trying to build up new partnerships around the world and new networks. You're trying to improve the quality of your mobility for the students and increase the numbers. You're trying to improve the quality and numbers of the staff mobility. You're trying to get involved in more projects everywhere. Then you start to have too many goals at once and they are not even that strategic. You really need to also think about why you're doing this. So this is why we say visionary goals and or qualitative and quantitative goals. You can have some qualitative and quantitative goals. For example, more student mobility. This is not a problem in itself, but if you don't also have some visionary goals and some goals that relate to the quality of your actions, so for example, higher skills or better employment rate in international sectors of your students that are, answering to the why questions. Why are we doing internationalization? Then you're not maybe thinking strategically enough in a way, and you're not really pushing yourself to that next level of working, because it's also about finding, the future vision here. So that's why these visionary goals are also important, not just quantitative improvement goals, for example, although you can have them. And based on this, then, absolutely most important still is a real concrete action plan that is linked to the strategic goals that you have chosen for yourself. So with the short-term actions, with the procedures, resources, schedules, performance targets, and remembering also that even here you need to leave some space for experimentations and innovation. So not locking it too much down and not setting everything in stone, but really having in mind that this is a process. It's a kind of a rolling approach, and we come back, we can improve the strategic goals, we can improve the way we're looking at things when we have better understanding of how our strategy work and how our building of our own future is working. And if you are able to put this in place and the organizational culture isn't fighting it too much, then you can really push your internationalization forward miles, and you can move away from this doing singular projects upon singular projects upon singular projects to something that is more linked with each other, and when you can see a real development forward and towards a sort of a vision of where you want to be. And that is what strategic planning really is about. And where does it all show? It shows in the daily work of your staff and your students. And this is where the key is this is where it needs to be measured, and this is where it needs to be evaluated if you have a good strategy. So it's not about how well it's written or how beautiful the paper is that you printed your strategy on. If you printed it at all, you can maybe do a cartoon or a video rather, but it should show in the daily work. Of course, it should show in the commitment of people, the fact that they understand better why they're doing their work, but that they also have a drive and a sort of a common goal and mission for their activities. And that's why strategy is important.